Welcome to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White, the real dragon slayer, author and entrepreneur sales coach. Tune in weekly for human conversation about business and sales. Enjoy business expert interviews, educational episodes, and virtual cuppas with entrepreneur business owners. So grab yourself a cuppa and enjoy. Here is your host, Jules White.
Welcome everybody to the Human Conversation, and I have got the most gorgeous guest this week, and her name is Vafa Taleban. She's gorgeous. Now, she's the founder of Personal Revolution Online, and we are going to talk about what that really means. But first of all, I want to say hello to the gorgeous Vafa. Hello, Vafa.
Hello, the lovely Jules, loveliest of lovely Jules. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I don't deserve it, but thank you.
You do deserve it. And one of the things that I need to tell the audience about, really, I think, is how we met. We've met on a mastermind that we've been part of for quite some months now. And the first time I met this lady, there was just this beautiful energy about her. And I knew we were just going to be friends. I just knew we were. So it was so lovely. And I've watched Vafa's journey. She's got an incredible backstory, which I want to touch on, but also now she's just starting to create her own business, which I am super excited about. And so this whole podcast is really about Vafa's journey in my mind. And so I want to just start. Okay, let's just start. This is how we do this, Vafa. Tell us where you were born.
Okay, I am Iranian. I was born and bred in the beautiful city of Shiraz, which is famous for its wine. So the Shiraz wine that you have is from my city. Whoop, whoop.
Wow, I didn't knew that about you. That's fantastic.
Yes. And I was educated there until I was 16. And then I came to the UK kicking and screaming with my parents, age 16.
I love that. Kicking and screaming. Okay. So
kicking and screaming.
Yeah. I mean, you need to tell us more about why you were kicking and screaming. What made you come to the UK?
So we stayed in Shiraz until the war ended. So as you know, the Iranian Revolution happened. I was 7 when it happened, and then war broke out. So we stayed there until the end of the war. But then my dad, who was educated abroad, decided that Iran was not the right environment for his two daughters to be brought up. Mom had been very keen to get out for some time, but because dad lived abroad when he was younger, he knew that it could be a lonely place, and they had a beautiful community and family life out there, and they didn't want to leave really. So the reason they left purely was because they wanted to give my sister and I a better life. So that's why I came here kicking and screaming. There was nothing with my life back there. I had a perfectly happy life, it wasn't perfect because of the revolution, obviously, but that's the life I knew. So there was, as far as I was concerned, that was my norm. What 16-year-old wants to go away from their friends? Changing schools at 16 is difficult enough. Changing countries and continents when I knew very little English, and then I was so close to gaining my GCSEs when I arrived here. It was quite tough. So
yeah, and I think one of the things that anyone's listening who has always lived in the UK, like me, has always been brought up here. I mean, I'm 50 this year, but I have never experienced war. So when you suddenly say to me, after the war, and it feels so strange to hear you say this. And I think what equally feels strange to me is that it would be your norm, and so actually you'd be kicking and screaming to come here when actually, when you look at the bigger picture, here was a much safer place for you guys.
Of course, but it is the norm. I always talk about the tennis court of our school, of our high school, being turned into a war shelter as soon as Shiraz started being hit by Scud missiles, and we used to just go and hide in this war shelter when the sirens came on. And one day the headmistress came into the room as we were in the middle of a math lesson, and she said, I want you to quietly and quickly make your way home. And we're super excited, thinking, yay, we're escaping maths, we go home. So we're kind of walking home with my friends in the middle of the day, and we hear almighty thump. And then we later on discovered that it was actually the war shelter at our school that was annihilated. So that was a close call. But I always kind of talk about the fact that it didn't really make that much of a difference in our life, because that was the norm. We kind of carried on with our lives. You kind of build a bit of a resilience to these things. Yes, it's upsetting. Yes, it's, it shook us at the time. But the next day we went back to school. So there was, that was our norm.
It's incredible. It really is, the different lives that we lead is really so profound, isn't it? So you come to the UK, and then what's the next memory?
So the next memory is starting in the language unit of a mainstream high school, because even though I knew English quite well, knowing the grammar and knowing vocabulary is very different from having an everyday conversation and studying to pass exams. So whereas my math was brilliant, my chemistry was brilliant, it was the language of math that I needed to learn. So it was quite tough. So I fell behind by a year, because age 16 I should have really started my GCSEs. But when I started going to school in December, I was put in Form 4 back then. It was Form 4, and then we did our GCSE years. So I just kept my head down and studied and just got on with it and passed exams. Tick, tick, tick.
Amazing. What amazing resilience straight away from such a young age. That's just wonderful. So you've left school then, and what was the first job that you decided to do? Tell us about that side of the story.
No jobs. That's the thing, because education is so important, and because my parents relocated, they immigrated here, they sold their livelihood, they brought all their resources here to invest so that we could get the education. Education was the forefront of everybody's mind. So it was pretty much from GCSEs going into A levels, and then to university, and then get a job. And 25 years later, I'm suddenly thinking, oh my goodness me, where did that 25 years go? And why did I choose the career that I did? And I'm just rethinking the whole thing now.
So what was it you actually went into from school?
So I studied to become a diagnostic radiographer in Cardiff. So I had a 3-year stint at University of Cardiff back then. When I finished my degree, I got a job and started working. It wasn't an environment I loved particularly, because I was particularly shy. I hadn't worked. I had always just kept my head down and studied. Therefore, going into the work environment was quite alien. So slowly but surely, I got used to the working environment. The shifts were tough. We used to do 24-hour shifts in a big university hospital, which was quite tough at times. I was working for about 3.5 years in Bristol until I met my husband, and then we were getting married, and then we relocated to Hampshire then, because he had a job here. So I came and worked in Winchester for 6 months, and then started working Basingstoke, and 20 years on, I'm still there.
Okay, so let's talk about the midlife crisis then, because I think there's a lot of us recognise that, Vafa. I've certainly had
Fabulous. Welcome to the club then, Jules, right?
I mean, you're not alone, I promise you. My midlife crisis was when I was 40, so that was obviously 10 years ago now, and maybe I've had some mini ones in between. But, when I was 40, I had the real harrowing part of my journey begin. That, people, if they listen to my TEDx, get that story. So, when was your midlife crisis? When did you sort of suddenly wake up and think, oh my goodness, this is not what I want to do anymore?
About 41, probably similar age to you, I suspect, about the same time. And I think for me it was the fact that I had been very career driven up until my baby came along. So I was an older mom. I was 36 when I had my child, and until then I had been very career driven. I had kind of climbed the ladder. I specialized in MRI, and I got my reporting degree in MR also. So I did everything I could clinically to reach the top of my career ladder without going into management, because NHS management is just not for me. And then, of course, my son came along and I took a long career break. 14 and a half months I was off with him. And then I decided to go back to work part-time because it was more important to me to spend time with him. Although I wanted a me time back, although I didn't want to sacrifice my professional life. I wanted to go back and still contribute and not be Harry's mum. I wanted to be Vafa again, the professional. So I happily went back, did a little bit of part-time work, and it was lovely, actually. I carried on doing part-time work until Harry was 5, and that's when he started getting, you know, as an older mum, you put all your energy, all your love into that child, and then as they start getting older, more independent, I didn't want to hold him back. So he didn't want to be with me that much, and I didn't want to hold him back. So I thought, right, time to start thinking about doing longer hours at work, perhaps, or doing something different, because by then I was ready for a challenge. But unfortunately, the opportunities weren't there available in the NHS to kind of develop any further than I had already. And being a part-time employee is very difficult to actually progress in that environment. And when it became clear that I couldn't progress any further and I was stuck and I was desperate to learn again, I started my journey of personal revolution, which I jokingly referred to at the time, and now it's stuck. So
yeah.
I just started going out there, personal development of a major type, and here we are 5 years on, and I'm still going through it. This is just the start of my personal revolution. So it's lovely to have gotten here. But I'm looking forward to the next 5 years.
It's really interesting, I think, when you hear you talk about the fact that you had your own personal revolution, and now actually what you're doing is creating an environment for other women to have their personal revolutions.
Absolutely.
Let's go on and talk a little bit about your business, because it is in the early stages. However, it's happening, and that's the exciting thing. So it's called Personal Revolution Online. Tell us a little bit about what this is about. What does it mean to you, Vafa?
Because I started my journey being an extremely private person, and then when I went into the personal development forums, I discovered how open the entrepreneurs were when I spoke with them. It was really, really refreshing to see how open they were, how willing they were to help. And I learned so much. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. So this became such a hunger for me to just absorb everything they could give me. And my aim, and I think I have come across so many inspirational people, you included, who have had amazing journeys, you know, and they're not afraid of sharing their journeys. And I think as a high functioning perfectionist firstborn, I never allowed myself to make mistakes. I had to kind of do things a certain way. They had to be right, so could never make mistakes. And this is what I'm now beginning to learn, that that's not what life is. You have to let yourself make mistakes, and that's how you grow. And because I had such amazing mentors and coaches throughout this journey, and because now I'm more in tune with my values, what I want out of life, it's ever so easy to go networking, see all those beginners that are exploring, like I was this time 5 years ago. It's ever so easy to spot them. So I thought, wouldn't it be lovely to just start something like this, just to inspire people, just to say there are options if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling numb if the status quo is no longer acceptable to you. And we stand for it for so long, don't we, Jules?
Yeah.
We just carry on because we think that is what life is. We're expected to go to work and earn and pay the mortgage and pay the bills, and we forget about ourselves. Little by little by little, we sacrifice on our values and what we like, and all of a sudden we wake up and we think, this isn't me. I've actually lost myself. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am. And then it's about actually communicating that with the people who are looking, saying that there are options. It's just about encouraging people to look at life differently and knowing, making them aware that they can have the life they wish for. And nobody says it's easy. It's not easy. You have to have all the tools in your toolbox to be able to move away from where you are to where you want to be. But it's something that's achievable.
It's very achievable. And I think it's really interesting. I picked up on something you said, because I just listen so deeply when I speak with people. I think it's having been in sales for so many years. And it's really interesting what you said about, I'm firstborn. I had to do things in a certain way. I could never make mistakes. It had to be perfect. And it's really interesting because I see that in you in terms of your journey you've had, where you perhaps say, I'll share some stuff with the audience that you and I have spoken about, where you'll say, oh, well, do I need to do it this way? And do I need this? And do I need a background? And do I need lighting? And, when you're doing things like video. And of course, there may be people who might argue with me here. But what I really want is I just want to see Vafa, and I just want to see you and your beautiful personality. I don't care what the lights are like, and I don't care where you're sitting. But that's because I think we are even more connected today to the human side of people than we ever were. Even though we're in this online space, I think we yearn to connect on that human level. What I see with you is, I think now the real Vafa is beautifully evolving now, which is such a lovely thing to see. And all you now need to do is be who you truly are, and then do this fabulous inspiring through your business. And then I think we're going to see something really special happen, for other women, because we need a purpose, don't we? Isn't that what it's about?
It is what it's about. It's about redefining your values. It's about redefining what you think success means, what happiness is, what security is. All of those things are always at the forefront of our minds, especially as mothers. That's what we want. We want all of those first and foremost. It's about making time for yourself and not feeling guilty about it, because how many women out there want to go out on a training day and then they feel guilty about it because then they're not home to pick their children up. So I've had to learn little by little, and my child is 10 now, so I started kind of doing this little by little, planting seeds and keeping him informed all throughout of what I was doing, why I was doing it, making sure he didn't mind if I didn't pick him up from school. All of those things have to little by little. So it's taken 5 years for me to actually get to where I am now, being comfortable, going out there and being comfortable spending a lot of money on my own development, because that's again something else that a lot of women won't do, because they think that's money that we can spend on the family. So it's about you. My emphasis is on the happiness and the mental well-being of our kids.
Yeah.
And the only way I know of instilling that in them is by having happy parents. So happy parents will give rise to happy children.
Because as you say, we have to be happy as the parents in order for the children to thrive. And I completely agree. I think it's a wonderful thought to have. It's a wonderful purpose to have, to sort of bring happiness to people who actually want a purpose in life, and they want a happy life anyway. But they perhaps feel stuck, because a lot of us know what that feels like, to feel stuck.
Yeah, and it's important to also here, I think, highlight that we have strong, especially as strong female leads, which a lot of us are, we have that strength as well as the vulnerability in us. And it's about being comfortable about showing the feelings that we have. And if we're not fully there, it's about being able to say, you know something, I'm not feeling it today. I need a little bit more help. I just need a cuddle today. I just need a little bit more love today, rather than be the strong person that I am. And again, as I'm going around looking at these networking situations differently with fresh eyes, I can see that that's what a lot of us need, and we're particularly bad at saying it. And I just don't know why, Jules, because we're all made of the same thing. No matter where we're from, we have the same limiting beliefs. No matter where we're from, we have the same fears and the same needs for security and love and belonging. So it's about being open and honest, but it's about allowing ourselves to be open and honest.
Yeah.
And I think the more I'm doing it with people, the more I'm getting it back.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's that like you say, the vulnerability is kind of the word, really, isn't it? We want to feel like people are comfortable saying, I'm not okay. There's so much around about mental health now, not just for women, but for men, maybe more so for men, because they won't.
Actually, you're right.
As easily.
Yep.
You know, so there's all of this now, and I think the marvelous thing is we're talking about it. So that means we're going to potentially then be able to open up about it, you know, because it's actually widespread that we're talking about it. So it's wonderful. I think we live in a real time of opportunity in terms of being human and being open and vulnerable now.
Yes.
The second thing I think that's important is your story, Vafa, because you know I've said this to you before, and to the audience, we've all got stories. And there's many people say to me, oh, I don't have a story, my story's not important, or actually I don't want to share my story, whatever the reason is. Your story, your backstory is what makes you inspiring. And
thank you.
Yeah, and absolutely. For me, it's where you've come from, the things you will have experienced, the way you came to a country, you didn't even speak the language, and then you still went on into academia and did so well, got an amazing job, built a wonderful career. All of this for me is massively inspiring. So, you're this leader of the personal revolution, and you're a very inspirational woman. I think own your story more, if I was to say anything to you, my lovely, because it's an amazing story. It really is.
I think at the the truth of it is that you have to build your network around you. The support network that you can build around you, I think, is the most important. And that's when you can be very honest about your fears. You can get honest feedback from people, and you can develop that way. And about being flexible, I think the flexibility has a lot to do with it, because I've been on this journey now for 5 years, and I know that this whole conversation started at my friend's coffee table when I finally opened up and I said, something, I have it all, but I'm not happy. I don't know what's wrong with me. And she said, there's nothing wrong with you. So we talked about it, and then little by little it became apparent that I hadn't allowed myself to talk openly about what I had feared or about what I hadn't liked. And the more I talked about it, the more the story made sense. So I think a lot of the time, now I don't know whether that's my personality type or whether it's a immigrant's mindset, I don't know what it is, that we don't allow ourselves to own the story. We don't allow ourselves to be totally even honest with ourselves, because we think we're just being silly. Why are we being silly? But there's no such thing as being silly. So if you were to share, you would be told that actually I feel the same thing, or you are well and truly within your right to feel the same thing. So it's all about sharing and about building that support network around you.
Yeah.
And that's the start of it. So that's the start of the journey, I think, and about learning about different things. So the flexibility comes into it, because then you have to be open and think, so what can I do that is different from what I'm doing currently? And then not give up, because this is my third attempt at doing something other than my day job. So, the first thing I was setting up, and I was getting advice from my trusted mentors and coaches, and they were saying, this is not you, it's not your personality, we don't think you should go with it. And I listened to them because I did my market research, and I realized that they were actually right. So it was my mentor kept saying to me, find your ikigai, find your ikigai. That's what you need to find. And that's where the importance of personal connections are, I think.
The whole ikigai thing, if you can just quickly explain that, because not everyone will know what it means, and I do know what it means, but tell us just quickly in a brief way what ikigai actually means, Vafa.
So it's a Japanese concept, and it, I think, literally translates, if I'm not mistaken, to reason for being. It's just what you need to live. And the people that are from this little island in Japan that's created this concept are known to live the longest. You know, their typical life expectancy is in the late 90s, and some to over 100, and they live independently. And the whole thing is what you're talking about. They have a purpose in life. So if you have that purpose in life, you are then able to feel useful. You have the feeling of belonging. And if you have all of those, then you live a better quality life. You're of use to people, and therefore you want to be there rather than just not be of any help to anybody and just give up on life. And that's where addiction comes from. You know, it's well researched that the addicts, if they give them somewhere to live, if they re-educate them, if they find them a job, they can very easily, with help obviously, they can very easily get them out of that addiction state. They're addicts because they have no feeling of belonging. So I think belonging, we underestimate it, but I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, I think we underestimate it too. So just to kind of give the audience a taste of what Personal Revolution Online is going to look like, because you're building it currently. Is it one-to-one coaching? Is it group work? What sort of stuff will you want to deliver in that Personal Revolution space?
So again, it's about coaching. So inspiring people in thinking differently, just asking questions that will make them think in a different way. I've also created a 12-step methodology, which I'm working on, which is something that I would take them through, just to give them tools and inspire them to think differently. So my next big project, as you know, is to get visible. What I would love to do is to get really inspirational people to come and share their journeys, because that's how people will realize that they will belong to one of those groups. They can actually it resonates with them that yes, the stories that are told are our stories. We share a lot of stories in common, and hopefully that will then persuade them to think differently about life. And if they're stuck, if they're not happy, they can think that yes, there is a better way of living.
It's possible, because there's no such word as can't, as my dad said.
Absolutely. And I quote you often enough. I quote you all the time. There's no such word as can't. Yes.
Exactly. And I think, the 12-step methodology sounds really interesting, because I think often we do need those tools. We don't always know how we're going to get from A to B. And these methodologies and programs and tools that we can teach as coaches, they're just gold, because they're those little things that you don't necessarily realize are going to make that big difference for you to get where you want to go. So I love that you're going to be doing a 12-step kind of program. That's really exciting. I'll be watching out for that. But actually, more importantly, I know that your aspiration, when you talk about sharing inspirational stories, your aspiration is that you're going to actually start your own podcast.
Yes, very soon. Yes. And you will be featuring Jules as my role model.
Well, I think it's great. And I think podcasting is truly wonderful. It's a way of us connecting in
of course,
another way that means that when I'm busy, if I'm driving, if I'm walking, I can listen to podcasts and I can feel inspired. So I love podcasting, and I love my guests, and I love my podcast. So I'm excited for you to start yours. I think it's going to be fabulous. And obviously I wish you lots of luck with getting that off the ground. What's the one thing you want to leave the audience with to sort of make them feel like they can actually create their own personal revolution?
I think we come across so many barriers when we are surfing through life, but it's about just learning to live differently rather than avoiding the big waves. So just take a deep breath and live through the big waves, because you're going to learn something from them and you're going to grow. So with every mistake we make, we're going to grow a little bit more. It's all about experimenting. It's all about exploring. It's about being flexible. And if plan A doesn't work, you can go for plan B. You have to be prepared to change your route. You can't have one thing in mind. It's good to have a focus, but you need to be flexible and change directions if needs be. If that means that you're going to get to your end goal quicker.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much, because I know I say about my dad saying there's no such word as can't, and people say to me, yeah, but there's some things you can't do. And then I say to them, well, actually, it's about finding a different way to do them. And so it's just the same principle as you've just said. And I think it's so true. We can make so many barriers, can't we, Vafa, if we want to?
Yes.
Really, it's a choice, isn't it?
And it's all about redefining the barriers that we have. So success, what does success mean to you? Just redefine that. What does security mean to you? Does it mean having 3 cars, or does it mean having 1 car but having a better quality of life? So it's all about redefining those and getting the peace of mind. So, as I've gotten older, peace of mind is the most important thing. If I don't have 5 holidays a year, so be it. So long as I live the life that I want, so long as that I don't compromise on my values, because that's the stage I'm reaching, that I don't want to particularly compromise on my values. Whereas as a younger person, you do often, because you feel you don't have a voice, you need to do that. So it's about that. It's about being true to yourself. That's all it is.
Vafa, it's been an absolute delight talking to you. And
thank you for having me.
I knew it would be. So you'll be able to find where you can follow Vafa. You'll be able to look out for her podcast. And if you want to connect with me, then certainly you'll follow her journey, because I always make sure I include my guests. If they've got some news, I'll make sure that everyone knows about it.
Awesome.
So listen, thank you. I truly, truly know that you're going to be amazing in this new role that you're going to have.
Thank you.
I know you're going to help and touch many, many people's lives. Just own your story for me. That's all I ever ask you, because it's such an inspiring story. And for the listeners, I hope you have really been inspired by Vafa. She's a really quite incredible lady, and a beautiful one. And I hope you've enjoyed our human conversation. The Human Conversation is on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, and it's also on SoundCloud. We would love you to like and comment and tell the world how wonderful our podcast is. But please just tune in next time, if you do nothing else, to The Human Conversation, where I will be speaking to another fabulous guest. Thank you so much for joining us. Ta-da for now.
You've just been listening to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White. To find out more about the other work that Jules does, please visit her website www.liveitloveitsellit.co.uk. And if you enjoyed the podcast, then please do leave a rating and review on the platform you use to enjoy her show. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.